What is going on, Sabres fans, and welcome to another episode of Sabres Spotlight, where we shine a light on all things Sabres hockey. Ryan, what's going on?
Just when I thought the Sabres were going to knock me out, they pull me right back in.
What's so funny is I kind of was thinking the same thing as like an opening line, and you totally just like took the words right out of my mouth because that's so true about what just happened. Well, I mean, we're gonna start with that. Obviously, everyone already knows this happened. Was it yesterday? 2 days ago? What?
2 days
So
ago,
so
two
two
days
days
ago.
ago, we're recording on
Well,
Thursday
here, let
night.
me let me let me interrupt you before because it was so funny and I was so angry. I think it was the day after the season or maybe the day of the last game where the Sabres account like tweeted out, "Okay, on Friday we're going to have a press conferences with Don Granato at 10 a.m. and Kevin Adams at 10:30." I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. Like I was so upset. I I was raging. I was texting people. I was like, I'm done. This is ridiculous. I was so mad. And then, what happens the next day? They fired Don Granato. And I'm like, all right. All right. They got me back. They got me back. I'm happy. And we can start talking about this exciting time for the Sabres.
Well, you know what they meant by that. They're gonna Skype Don at home in his PJs and ask him what his plans are now that he's got all his free time.
Poor guy. Before we like talk about what's going to happen here and kind of recap like what went wrong and stuff and how we feel, but I don't feel like we should kind of celebrate Don a little bit because he really did like for all the horrible time we had this last year. I think when it came to individual players, he did develop them and he did push them along as players, but just couldn't get him over the hump. And he's a good coach, and he'll land on his feet somewhere. But I am very glad that the Don Granato era is over. How do you feel?
Oh, I'm elated.
Yeah, you were anti Don like for a while.
Yeah, it's I mean, you don't like to see anybody get fired, but I kind of do honestly because I just think back to like as again like I mean we've said this before like sure like maybe he's just more of an assistant coach and he's done some good things here. It's not like it's all been bad, but he's just not what they need right now. And yeah, I mean honestly, I could not imagine. I think the reason I'm more excited is because I could not imagine going through this whole off season just knowing that he's coming back. Like I think this team just desperately needed a change so badly that I mean we're going to continue doing this show anyways because we love the Sabres and we like doing this and it's fun. But like just going through a whole offseason of content and then just having that thought always in the back of my mind that like Don's coming back for another season and I'm just dreading that so much. It would have kind of it would have kind of sucked a little bit. So I'm kind of happy that it's a new we don't know what's going to happen next. We'll get into that in a little bit, but it's a new phase, it's a new chapter, and the the bones are there. Like this is a good team. We've talked about how we believe in the players, and so if GM Kevin Adams can be as aggressive as he says he's going to be and go and get the right man for the job, that's exciting. And there hasn't been a lot to be excited about. So like you said, it is kind of exciting that you don't like a coach getting fired, but at the same time, it is kind of exciting, and hopefully, who they pick can rejuvenate some of the hockey feeling in Buffalo.
Well, dude, to go to like the dreading the off season if Don was here, like I saw so many people be like, oh, since Seth Appert is doing a good job, and I'm sure Seth Appert is like going to be a coach soon in the NHL, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else in the NHL, like, to get his feet wet, maybe we can bring him up as an assistant coach. And if things don't go right with Don by October or November, then we can ban Don and install Seth. And I'm like, we can't do that, man. That's just like to me, I was calling it a half measure. Just it's not really doing the thing. And now when they finally were like, okay, Don's out, I'm like, and Kevin Adams saying, and I know we'll talk about it, that he wants experience and pedigree as a head coach.
Kind of
That
ruled
rules
Appert out.
Seth Appert. So I'm like, whoa, okay. This like changes things a little bit because number one, I think we all have a little bit of worry about the type of guy that Adams can pull in because this is the Sabres and the bones are here, but it still is kind of a laughing stock organization with the Pagulas at the helm. But if the Pagulas are giving Adams the go ahead to do whatever and opening the pocketbook to get a veteran presence in here, well, damn, this opens up like a lot of options for the Sabres, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, which it sounds like that is the case. And as far as Appert goes too, I think I'm curious what you think. Like, I don't know if coming to the coming to the NHL would, even as an assistant, would be something he'd want. I wonder if he'd just rather stay a head coach in the AHL, and maybe that's more appealing to him anyways, as opposed to coming to. I mean, then you just then the question is like, okay, well, if the Sabres have a good year, like how much question or how much does Appert actually get credit for, right? So is there just going to be this new coach, this new voice? So maybe it's actually career wise a better move to just continue being in Rochester. He has a great team there. He's got some stud players. So you would, and I mean, they're playing great hockey right now. They went on a nice Calder Cup run last year, getting to the semifinals. You hope this year they're going to do the same thing. They have a chance to finish first in the North Division. So he's having success there, and he's had sustained success there. So I think even for him, although yeah, it seems like he's pretty much been ruled out for the Sabres job. I don't even know how much he'd want that over, as far as assistant goes, over what he's doing right now.
Yeah, that's a good point because he's getting a lot of credit for developing those players down there. So someone's going to give him a look at some point within the next year or two. It just won't be here because whoever we hire is going to bring in his own assistants, and there's no room for Appert on the bench. And I do hope we keep him in Rochester and he doesn't like move on for greener pastures somewhere else with the new regime coming in because he is a good developer and like all the young guys down there, like Cooley, Grozan, Neuchev, Johnson, they're all playing very well. So I'd be privy to have him stay down there for as long as possible.
Yeah, I don't think a regime change for Buffalo would change anything for Appert. I think he's well liked by Kevin Adams, and that's something that would be talked about beforehand. And yeah, he's having a lot of success there. And if he does get a shot in the NHL in a year or two or whatever, I'll be rooting for that team because I think, although I don't want Appert now, I like the guy, and I appreciate what he's doing for Rochester. And if he gets a shot in the NHL, I'll definitely be rooting for that team, whoever it might be, as long as it's not the Toronto Maple Leafs. But yeah. Let's get more into Don here, though, before we go into possible coaching category or coaching options and things. We have some things here that we want to get to, but what do you think? What's like your overarching thoughts, or maybe just like you know, I guess just thoughts on like Don and his time here, and takeaways. Like, was it a success? Was it a failure? What's just kind of like your final thought on his few years here.
I think disappointing overall, and they were definitely too quick to the trigger to give him that 2 year extension. That he's gonna sit home and collect his $4 million. Doesn't even have to have another job to get 4 million. That's a great life. That's kind of why I don't really feel that bad for the guy. But like I said, like in the little intro there, he was a good coach, but he kind of just had one speed. Like once the Sabres kind of got stopped on the rush, they really didn't do much. I mean, at the end of the season, they were graded out as the worst forechecking team in the league. They did not really generate any offense like from the cycle game for 2 straight years, and he couldn't figure it out. So it's time for another guy to come in here and teach the Sabres the right way to play.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think he's the thing is like he did a lot to develop these guys, and that's certainly appreciated, and there's a thing for that. It just wasn't he didn't have the right style to get them to where they need to go now, right? He wasn't going to be pushing, and we'll get into player interviews in a little bit, but it certainly seems like there was a lack of accountability, and maybe some complacency within the organization that actually started like day one in training camp. And so I think maybe he was just kind of unable to hold the locker room, kind of demand that respect. I think when you're developing guys, it's so important to, and I think Don's very good at this, to establish relationships with your players. And I think this year he just struggled to find the line between friend and coach, and needing to drive them more and be more of that uh, you know demander from the guys and whatnot. And so I think last year the success that they had, even though it wasn't success, you still missed the playoffs. But I mean, they had 91 points. It was the best season they've had in a while. It was fine for that season. Like there was no pressure, there was no expectations. But this year it just didn't cut it. And yeah, I think disappointment's a good word. It's just, yeah, I wish it would have worked out, but it didn't, and they made the move, and I'm happy for that. But ultimately they end up 122, 125, and 27 as the Sabres head coach. And then they also got rid of assistant coach Jason Christie and video coordinator Matt Smith.
Yeah, the funny joke was, what did the video coordinator do to get fired?
I know that is interesting. I don't know
It's
what.
so funny. I don't know how that stuff works.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Adams just didn't like him or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
because what could you really do wrong? I feel like the video reviews that we had, like we were actually pretty successful on those. So if anything, it wasn't for poor performance, I guess. But um, yeah, so we'll move on from Don here, and just like the Sabres are, and turn the page and see what happens
Well,
as we go.
before we move on, I will say that Lance Lysowski of the Buffalo News did tweet out that Matt Ellis is not going to retain his role behind the bench, and he's going to be reallocated in a different aspect of the organization. So I'm assuming like player development side, like working with like the training camp, like what the rookie camp and stuff, and player development and stuff like that. So that's good. He's not going to be back, and with the other assistants, like they weren't let go because they're still either under contract or maybe they don't have a contract, and they don't necessarily have to say that they're firing them. But either way, I think that if they're still here, whoever the new head coach is going to say whether Marty Wilford or Mike Bales have a job. Like it's going to be his decision. So I'm not too worried about like, oh my God, why didn't they fire this guy or this guy as well? Why was it just those two? Like whoever they bring in here is going to make that decision.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, honestly, I can kind of see why like Bales and Wilford like would would stay. I mean, the defense was definitely better. Penalty killing still ended up, kind of like league average, but was, improved. And they did some interesting things on the penalty kill as far as player usage and things. So if you're just looking at the season and the areas where they maybe had a little bit more success, and I think those two guys make sense, right? And Ellis is obviously the hot topic because of the power play being bad, and who knows what's going to happen with him. I think a lot of guys and girls, Sabres fans were expecting that maybe he was gone, but I think there is value with him in other areas, and if they're able to just match that up a little bit better, then that's fine. If this head coach comes in and wants to make some changes, then they'll do that. And I don't think that Kevin Adams is going to be shy to make those changes. I mean, especially after firing Don, he's kind of showed that he's able to pull the trigger on some of these big decisions, and that's what we need to see from him, more. So, all right, anything else here?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, we got some. We both have some lists of some candidates that we're going to go through, somewhat similar. I'll let you take the lead, Ryan. You're a little bit more familiar with some of these coaches, but the Sabres have some options. We said this last week and the week before. If you were going to fire Don, this was a good year to do it because there was a lot of credible coaches and coaches who have been in the league for some time that are available, that got fired or are just out there, and are free agents. And so, what are some of the top options you think the Sabres have for this year that realistically you'd like to see them get in potentially?
Well, let me start on the unrealistic suggestion has been Rod Brindamore, but I don't think he's leaving
Yeah,
Carolina.
yeah,
If somehow he wiggled out of there, he would be my number one guy. I mean, played with Kevin Adams on the 2006 Stanley Cup champion Carolina Hurricane team, and they've been friends for a long time. But he's not leaving, guys. Like he's not. Elliot Friedman said that he has a contract in place and he's not going anywhere. That would be the dream, That's the dream for me, but he's not going anywhere. But
Yeah, I'd get put that at like 5%. Like
right,
it's not happening.
like maybe less,
Yeah,
0.05, like
yeah.
0.05%. Why would you leave Carolina? Like they're so good, you know. It's so. But I'll give you my number one choice, and this is going to be so controversial. And honestly, if anyone listens to this, I might get some hate for it because nobody wants to see Joe Quenneville in the league again after what he has done and presumably has done, and we don't know all the facts. Like we did kind of get all the reports that he definitely did his part in on the wrong side of what happened to Kyle Beach, and it's so unfortunate, and it disgusts me that a coach would put winning above, protecting a player, and it's awful what happened to Kyle Beach and whoever the other John Doe is. There's another John Doe out there from that organization that his name hasn't been released yet and was also sexually assaulted by that disgusting pig that I wouldn't even say his name that worked for the Chicago Blackhawks. But Joel Quenneville recently did an interview kind of saying that he apologizes and he was wrong and admitted it, that he could have done better. And I guess I'm a person that kind of believes that, 10 years later, if Kyle Beach is in his heart accepting that Joe Quenneville is really sorry and Joe Quenneville wants to coach in the NHL again and gets approved by the NHL to coach again, I think he should get a shot. I mean, it would be amazing for the Sabres because he's one of the best coaches of all time, in my opinion. I mean, 3 Stanley Cups with the Blackhawks speaks for itself. It's just kind of, it's really on your moral compass. And my moral compass might be shaded here because I'm so sick of losing. I know
Yeah.
that winning hockey games shouldn't go ahead of what happened to Kyle. And I don't know, man. I'm so conflicted because on the ice, I feel like he would be my number one choice. But off the ice, I'm like, I don't know if I really want that at all. I'm just admitting here that like my moral compass is a little bit off when it comes to him just because of winning, and that fucking sucks for me to say out loud. But hey, maybe, it's been 10 years since the incident, and we'll see. We'll see what happens to Quenneville. I don't even know if he'll ever be coaching again in the league anyway. So we'll see. But
Yeah,
my next
he's so
go ahead.
I,
You have some
yeah, I'll just elaborate a little bit here. Uh the reason, I mean, this is a good name to bring up because of the pedigree, and like you kind of noted here, it would definitely give certain degree of credibility to the Sabres organizations being a three-time Stanley Cup champion. I wonder though if with this being the reason I don't think this will happen is just because with this being such a pivotal year, and I think it's and a pivotal year for Adams too. Like Adams is going to be. I don't know if the Sabres miss again. I don't know if Adams will be gone, but he'll certainly be on the hot seat. But with this being such a pivotal year, I don't think they're going to want that distraction because even
yeah,
though it's 10 years later, there's going to be questions on this, right? So
a hundred
and
percent,
and
a hundred percent.
maybe you can say the right things and dispel that early on and then just focus on hockey, but who knows? And if and I just don't know. My thought there is are they going to want a distraction on a year where they need to get this locker room and these players just focused and turned around and just really just maintaining that focus on winning? I wonder if this would just be too much of a distraction, but it's an interesting name just because I don't think people have, I haven't seen his name floated around a lot. And obviously there's reasons for that and whatnot, but that's just my thoughts on him and coming here potentially.
Makes sense. So the next guy is on both of our lists. Jay Woodcroft, who was fired by the Oilers this season after what did they lose like 10 of their first 13? Like the Oilers were, I remember early in the season watching their games and they would like dominate the puck. They would dominate. They couldn't score, and then they'd give up a 2-on-1 and get scored on. It was insane. Like, was that really his fault? Like, I know obviously they're one of the best teams in the league now, and McDavid had 100 assists, and they popped off, and they were the Oilers. They were the Oilers
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But man, this guy, he was the first fastest Oilers coach to 50 wins, and he intrigues me. Like, I also don't know though if pedigree applies to him. Like straight from Adam's mouth, he wants pedigree, and experience. And last year was Jay Woodcroft's first NHL or two. He's been there. He was there what, 2 seasons? Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe 1.5. I don't fucking know. Either way, it's either 2 or 1.5. But that's not exactly like an abundance of experience. Like I know he had success, but I'm just unsure. I like him though. I like him as a coach. I think wherever he goes, he's going to be great. But and if the Sabres hired him, I'd be pretty stoked.
Yeah, I think this would be an upgrade. He's fourth on my list. I did not have Quenneville on my list, but Woodcroft is fourth on my list, and I just think he was. I mean, the start was horrid. Like it was truly an awful start. And when you're the problem is when you're the head coach of Edmonton and you have a team that legit has like Stanley Cup aspirations and expectations, like talk about a league that the Sabres aren't in right now, but like that is the was the expectation for the Oilers. Like they could not do what Kevin Adams did and sit on their hands all season. Like they needed to do something. And unfortunately I think he was the sacrificial lamb. I mean that they turned it around with the same roster. Like it's not like they needed to make a big move and like they just started getting saves and then they made a couple moves at the deadline, but they were already in a better spot at the deadline. So they had the pieces and they just weren't getting saves. They were underperforming on the ice, but like you said, like they still were like playing good on the ice. They just weren't getting saves. And Woodcroft, I mean, he knew it was coming, and but yeah, I think I'd be fine. I'd be fine with it. He's a younger guy, and that can bring some energy to a team. So, like I said, he's fourth on my list.
Our next guy, and he's on both of our lists as well. And guys, we might be a little familiar with him. How about some Lindy Ruff? How do you feel, dude, about Lindy potentially coming back? Like I'm mixed on this. I'm
Yeah,
very mixed because like his resume speaks for itself. Everywhere he goes, his teams are good. Everywhere he goes, his teams outchance other teams. Like it's ridiculous. If I like, I peeked into the like his a little bit of his numbers, like as a coach, like not at the end of his tenures, obviously, because he's getting fired at the end of his tenures, but like with the first season or two at a team, dude, those teams are good. Like they are really good. And the only thing that's bad about them is the goaltending, but is that the goalies themselves or is that Lindy's system? Like I know when he was here 20 years ago, um, Miller kind of was one of the best goalies in the league, and the Sabres played high up tempo offense and were amazing and fun, and we fall in love with those teams. And Miller was always there to bail us out. So that's kind of Lindy's like MO. But man, doesn't that sound like a team like a fit stylistically if his name wasn't Lindy Ruff?
yeah, yeah. 100%. That's the thing. Like that's where I'm at, and that's why he's fifth on my list. And I made a list of six. He's just ahead of Seth Appert, so he's pretty low on my list as far as like who I'd want to be in here, but I mean that doesn't mean I don't want him in here. Like if we hired Lindy Ruff, I'd be fine with it. Like I have other options that I'd want ahead of him. I don't know. I just think it, how often does that work? Where you get like there's a reason that we moved on. It was time to part ways. Would Lindy even want that? I don't know. It's like there's a part of me that's like it, I like it because like if we can recapture some of the Lindy magic, like the roster is good, and there's definitely going to be no questions on accountability. With Ruff at the helm, and I mean his energy on the bench is what we wanted from Don all year, right? So like if there's no
Even in his
way.
old age, the man is 64 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, there's no way. How many times have we bitched this year about the Sabres getting off to another bad start or having a bad period and Don's just sitting on his hands? Like that would not happen with Lindy. So I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it, but I just wonder if that's the right move for right now. But no question, it fits Adams' hockey pedigree. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it could work, but I think there's a little bit more risk involved with it too, which
When
is
it
why I
comes
moved him lower.
when it comes to Lindy, do you think nationally it would get a lot of eye rolls?
Like, what do you mean?
Like wow, the Sabres they fired another coach and they hired Lindy Ruff. Like way to go
Yeah,
back to that well. Like I think like nationally a lot of guys would be like, really? Like they're going with Lindy?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas like here we'd be stoked kind. I feel like locally, I feel like people would be calling into GR and being like, "This is awesome." But I feel
Yeah,
like nationally they wouldn't be like that at all.
Yeah, yeah, probably. I don't really care about that anyways. Like I don't listen to that shit anyways. Like we'll listen to like even with the Bills. Like I don't like it's
I
just a
know we
joke
listen
now.
local. We
Yeah,
listen local.
yeah,
There are so many good like local content creators for the Sabres and Bills that it's like you don't even really need to listen to national sources like at all anymore unless
yeah.
they're like unless it's like a Schefter or Elliot Friedman like breaking news. Like the local game is so good they know the ins and outs of the team. So yeah, I was just kind of throwing it out there because I heard I forget who it was. Damn, I don't know who it was, but I was listening to a radio hit on GR and it was a national guy and they were just like, really, like kind of shocked that like Lindy was a choice there, and I'm like, oh boy, I just am very curious about the outside sentiment there.
Well, it's a thing too because of the way the Sabres are viewed right now. You know, kind of
Yeah,
as a more of a non-serious franchise and the poor little Sabres. So I think that it's a thought or it's a perception that is somewhat realistic or we have to think of it just because I think Sabres fans are they're kind of thinking they think of their team as being a joke nationally. So then it's like, is this just adding fuel to the fire, right? So I think that's why it's there. I wish that didn't have to be the case, but there's reasons why we why we have these kind of subconscious thoughts.
let's go on to our next guy because as I think about it a little bit more, I feel like Craig Berube would be a good choice. And part like in the beginning, I was like, no, he's like kind of like a defensive guy, and those Blues, like thinking about those Blues teams, it was always like, two-way play and defense, and Bennington got super hot. But if you want a guy that's going to hold your players accountable, like the players, we're going to talk about what they individually said, but the theme of the players was like, stop babying us, like hold us accountable, bench us, put us in the press box, like we want to be pushed. Craig Berube would be your guy, in my opinion, if it came to that.
hmm Yeah, I mean I have Barube
Third,
third on my list, so he's up there mainly just from a pedigree standpoint. You know, like I again, I we need someone in here who's going to motivate these guys, and I think he can do it. I have him down a little bit because I'd like I think I want someone a little younger, like
yeah.
for to coach. Like how old is he again? He's like 60s, right?
Yeah, he's a little older. The thing about him though is, man, like he's one of those guys where like all players are like, you don't fuck with him. Like
Yeah,
he will yell at you. He will get in your face, even in his old age. So it's like, damn, dude, like that fire is something that we're looking for.
yeah,
So it's a little bit like I did do a little bit of digging like today actually on him, and like there was a lot of stuff where he was like the motivator, and his assistants were the X's and O's. Like a lot of credit goes to Steve Ott. Shout out former Sabre Steve Ott for the X's and O's on the Stanley Cup winning teams and the other team and the success of the Blues. So I wonder if Berube comes in, he'd have to bring in like a really good tactician as an assistant. But man, if you want a motivator, like this is the guy.
yeah. I'd be totally fine with this. He's he's third on my list, and my top three are kind of all kind of on the same wavelength for me. I just put the other two guys up there because they were a little bit younger, but I'd be totally on board with this. He's won a cup before, so he knows what it takes, and yeah, so I think he'd be able to come in and do what we need him to do right away. So
Let's go to our next. My last guy. I didn't include. We'll talk to Mike Sullivan after this because I'm unsure if he's going to get fired. That was just a guy that like if Mike Sullivan. Actually, let's get into him now. Fuck it. If Mike
he's
Sullivan is
second on my list.
second
Yeah,
on your list. If Mike Sullivan is fired by the Pittsburgh Penguins, he goes straight to number one on my list.
yeah.
Talk about pedigree, success, motivator, great tactician, respected around the league. And he's got that Pittsburgh connection. Like we have a Pittsburgh front office with Jason Carmanos. He does have a good relationship with Kevin Adams. This would be a bang on hire. Like this is the guy. He will be the number one coach in the coaching pool if he's fired. I just don't know if he will be because I haven't seen anything about the Penguins posting like press conferences or anything concerning the GM or him. So I'm unsure.
If he was available now, I think Adams would have hired him already.
Yeah,
I think
maybe
he'd be a
or
perfect fit.
tried to.
Adams has talked about how he wants he's not building this team just for 1 year. He wants sustained success. I mean, you can't. I mean, look at what Sullivan. I mean, that's all he's done his whole career, right? It's just sustained success, like with the Penguins and things. So I don't know. I just think a lot of the things that Adam said in his presser about hockey pedigree and accountability and building for sustained success and being able to coach for that. I think Sullivan, again, if he was available, even though that he's not, I think he might still be, right at the top of Kevin Adams' list as well.
Yeah,
I would love that. I would love that.
I listened to so shout out Chad Dieteminesis, you're the man. He posts like his little episodes now that the season's over, like little 20-minute hits. He had like a little theory that like just just wish casting or like theory commenting that like what if Adams like being so sure of the guy he wants in his press conference kind of had like a back channel through Jason Carmanos, like he'll be familiar with like what's going to happen to Sullivan in the offseason, and maybe that was why Adams was so like dead on, like knowing the guy that he wants. Maybe it's him. Maybe he knows he's going to get fired,
Yeah,
and we're going to try to pounce on that immediately.
I would love that. How does that work? Do you know how that works with like can Adams talk to him now?
No,
Like,
no,
okay,
you can't.
yeah,
No,
yeah. I
like
kind of figured,
honestly,
but I mean,
yeah, it would be like Adams would contact his agent kind of thing, but you can't really do that now.
yeah,
Which is why I'm just like I've been like looking at Penguin stuff pretty much like all day and yesterday since their season was ending and ended, and I'm like they haven't said really much, so
yeah,
it could happen.
and then bring Sid the Kid here.
Yeah, could you? Oh my god, that'd be insane. That would be fun. Oh, we can dream. We can dream.
That would be
Oh my
sweet.
god.
I don't even know what his contract status is though. Is he done? Is he like a free agent after this year?
I think he's got a couple years left.
Yeah,
But
I
no,
think he does
that
too.
guy's
I think
never
he does
he's
too.
never leaving Pittsburgh. And that would be fucking hilarious. The little Buffalo Sabres trading for Sidney Crosby. That'd be fucking hilarious.
Talk about pedigree behind the bench and on
I
the
know.
ice.
God damn. Oh my god. Uh so
We got one
our
more guy
last
here.
guy. I'm curious. Um, why do you have Todd McClellan as your number one head coaching candidate? Because honestly, when it comes to Todd McClellan, I'm not too familiar. Like he's been on the West Coast his whole career
Yeah.
with LA and with San Jose, and I'm not like that familiar with him at all. What about McClellan put him to number one on your list?
Well, I think honestly, I think just familiarity because I watch a lot of West Coast hockey to a degree because it's always when I'm turning on late at night, like when the kids go down. So I've watched his teams play with the Kings, and it's kind of like you noticed here, like his teams they're just always good. This year was so weird because the Kings, like we talked about it too, mid season, how they were just kind of like spiraling, and there's no there's no denying that like they got better. They got that new coach bump with Hiller, but like I feel like I'd still rather have McClellan. Like I don't know, I just like his demeanor behind the bench. I've watched a few of his like interviews post game, and I think he could be same thing, kind of like one of those guys. He seems like a little bit more like level headed, but he would definitely be able to hopefully kind of hold the locker room and demand some more of that respect. I mean he's had a lot of success in the league. Again, I another one where I'm like, did he win a cup with the Kings?
No,
I think
no.
yeah. So like
He was
that,
with San Jose at the time that the
yeah,
Kings won the cup.
yeah. So like again, I just wonder if like not that I don't think I think that's a disqualifier, but I just wonder if he's like kind of like another one of those ones where it's like Woodcroft almost like is that enough for Adams or does he want more? But
Yep.
yeah, it's more subjective, just kind of what I've seen from him behind the bench and watching the Kings and how they play hockey. I feel like they play a style kind of similar to what we want to be able to play. Just kind of like pesky as far as like the back checking and forechecking and being able to
And
kind
they've
of like
got, yeah, you're right. Dude, that excites me because they have
yeah.
great offensive players as well.
Right. So I think like system wise, it kind of like it could fit and be a good transition. I mean, Adams talked about this year how like despite the more emphasis on defense this year, like systematically things didn't change, and I would assume that they're gonna do that for next year. And so I just think he could be a kind of like a plug in, and you don't have to change too much, and be a big upgrade. So,
I'm thinking about it now, and you saying that, I feel like the Kings are the same, like what the Sabres like could be like
hmm
leveled up.
yeah,
Like they're
yeah,
like a
for sure.
leveled up version of the Sabres. Like minute eating defensemen, like big defensemen, long sticks, two-way forwards that and they got like a bunch of wingers like Kevin Fiala, one of the best wingers in the league. Kopitar's been there a while, like a while, holding down the fort. He's one of the best two-way players of all time, and they've always had just a good team. Like I want a good team,
Yeah,
even if we're LA and we kind of top out and like we win a round. That's kind of like good for now. Like I want to win the
yeah,
Stanley Cup.
yeah,
I want to see playoffs. Like I think a guy like McClellan could definitely get us there.
yeah. And I mean, they always work hard. Their problem this year was PLD. He just came in and like
Oh my God, I know they gave him a bag, and dude, he's on the fourth line. He's their fourth line center right now.
he's like their Jeff Skinner, from
Yeah,
last year.
he
But
that kid, man, he's got so much talent, and I question whether he like loves hockey. Like
I know, yeah, it's so weird.
that's crazy for me to say because I'm sitting here in my basement, but every time I watch the Kings, I'm like, this guy could be so much better, man. It's weird.
He's had critics everywhere he's been. So
Oh
like,
yeah,
I mean, after a
he quit
while, it's like your
quit.
reputation kind of follows you.
Yeah, he quit on a team, and oh my God, yeah, he's a great like he's got skill, he's great, but yeah, that team is it's good despite that. So
All right, I think
can
that's
we? Oh, well, let me before we move on,
yeah, yeah.
can we talk about some guys that like we don't want because oh my God, when we were typing at the show doc last night, Matt put Dave Haxtell in the Seattle coach, and I was literally editing the show doc as Matt was editing the show doc. It was funny. And I think I typed in underneath you writing that I would jump off the Peace Bridge if they hired Dave Haxtell. So like him, like Dean Evison. Who the fuck else is out there? There's like a whole graveyard of DJ Smith, the guy that was in Ottawa for like half of a fucking decade and didn't do shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's like a whole like coaching graveyard of guys where do not want at all. Please do not hire those guys.
So
So
okay, I mean, I have to defend myself a little bit here. So I don't. Admittedly, I don't know much about Hacksaw. What I was doing is I was going through current coaches, and I'm like, kind of like Sullivan. I'm like, who else could potentially get fired? That's just kind of
yeah,
like a wild
which
card
makes
candidate.
sense. I'm just giving you shit.
No, I know, but then I'm thinking like, okay, well, like, I mean, Seattle obviously had a bad year this year, but they did get to the playoffs before, and like, so like, you got over the hump, and that's what the Sabres need to do. So I'm like, again, it was just kind of like an unserious thing, but then you right
Oh
away
yeah,
were like, absolutely not. I'm like, okay, well, you're much smarter than I am when it comes to hockey, so I'll take your word for it.
yeah. I mean he was really bad in Philly, and he when he got hired by Seattle, everyone was like, "Oh God, like that's really not good." And they made the playoffs last year, which fuck the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 13 years, but he's not the guy. There's so many guys that are more capable. I'll say.
I think, I mean, this list is kind of what you're seeing thrown. Like, these are the names. A lot of the names we brought up today are the names that you're seeing out there a lot. I feel like we probably talked about the next Sabres head coach just now on the podcast. Like, I think this is a pretty good list of like realistic candidates who we'd be looking at. I'd be surprised if it was somebody else. I mean, I guess there's other options, but I think this is kind of like the top names that are out there right now. So we'll see what happens. But if we get one of these guys, I mean, I'll be excited. So we'll see.
Yeah, me too, man.
All right, well, we'll move on from that and get into some of the year-end pressers. There's a lot of stuff between players and more player interviews came out today, which I want to watch. They kind of started with some of the big names, which is what everyone wants to see, and we'll go through some of those today on the show. We'll do Kevin Adams first. Adams talked for about 40 minutes, like he did the year prior, and I guess first off, before we get into responses, what did you think about his demeanor? How he handled questions, and he was given some hard questions. Like it wasn't, it definitely wasn't softballs that were thrown his way.
Well, I guess the word that comes to mind immediately is it was impressive. And I thought going in that he was going to be like, oh, we're a young team, yada yada. But he did the opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, he basically said he basically squashed that narrative, right? He's which he's done before, but he really kind of puts bed. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I'll elaborate on this a little bit more as we go, but I went back and watched the 2022 end of season press conference, and if you I which I don't recommend for anybody because it'll piss you off, because if you go back and watch that, he comes off a little like snide in there, and just like he didn't want to, not that he didn't want to, but he was faced some hard questions about, like not making the playoffs and whatnot, and just like his demeanor, and that was more like standoffish and like kind of shrugging off some of that, like this was a successful season, which in a way it was. But this year, wow, talk about a whole 180. I mean, he said multiple times that like we just didn't play well. We need higher standards. It needs to start from day one. So I think he was, the impressive part was that that demeanor was there throughout, and it seems like he's focused in on this is where this franchise needs to go, and we're not gonna waver from there. And yeah, I thought he handled the questions really, really well.
Dude, the one thing he said that was I was like, whoa, where he was like, we weren't good enough this year, like period. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, and he did take some responsibility for it too. He's like, it's not me. I'm the leader. I'm the one that's gonna get this right. And I'm like, all right, Kevin, go off, King. Like, damn, okay. What was the most interesting question you think was asked in his answer?
I'll get in there in a second, real quick, because you mentioned that. Like,
Okay.
I think that that was important for him. Just the fact that he said multiple times, like, it starts with me, and I. Because if you're the buzzword was accountability, right? Like we heard that throughout the whole presser. So like if you're at the top, which he is, and that's something you expect from the levels of your organization, management, and team and players, like it has to start with you. And I love that he took that accountability multiple times and said, I failed doing this, and this. I'm taking full accountability from that. Like that is a good start. And so I like that from him, and that he was very adamant in saying that, like he meant it, which was good. As far as like the questions go, I mean there
Well,
was a lot.
well, I gotta say, Sabres PR needs to get it together because these questions are almost you can't even hear them. Like, get some better mics in there, guys. Come on.
I don't know what's up with that. And I see comments on like YouTube of like people saying like, oh, they finally got the interviewers mics, and I'm like, what are you listening to? I'm like, I can't hear anything.
We might be going deaf, dude. Like, I already know I'm half deaf, but like, man, you might be following me because I'm always like, what? What did he say?
Well, when I listen on my laptop with my headphones plugged in, I feel like it's a little bit better. But I was listening to a bunch of these in the car because I'm trying to like listen on the go while I'm like going to and from work, and I can't hear any of the questions. I'm like, I'll just wait until Adam starts speaking.
Yeah, I think he was like to. I'll answer my own question because I kind of like interrupted you and went off, but like when he was just pressed about like the year as a whole, I think Mike Harrington asked him just like, what do you think about the season? And he was just like straight up like no bones about it, just like wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to hear because it wasn't good enough. Like
Well, it
obviously.
was, and he said that in response to the question. I don't know if it was Mike who asked or it was somebody else. They said, what is your thoughts on the narrative of not being able to perform under pressure? And his
Yeah.
response was good. He basically said, listen, these guys have been playing with pressure since they're 16. I don't believe in that at all. He goes, the bottom line is we just didn't play good enough. He goes, I don't think it's that we couldn't play with pressure. He goes, we just needed to put a better product on the ice. And I mean, he was very blunt with saying that. So
Yeah, and he pretty much said that he's going to do everything he can this offseason, whether it's players and whoever the new coach is and their staff to get the Sabres on the right track. And I don't know, I think the Sabres might be a big player this offseason. I'm very excited for what the possibilities could be.
They have to be, and Adams knows it, right? And the fact that he said, he mentioned Pagula and said he's just as involved now as when he started. I somewhat eye roll at that because, like, of course
Me
you're
too.
not gonna, yeah, you're
He's
not
got to
gonna
kiss
bite
the
the hand
owner's
that feeds
ass.
you. So, like,
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, I believe him somewhat, but like, whatever. Like, I mean, hey, step one in showing me that was letting Terry go, right? So, or not letting Terry, letting Don go, so
Oh,
like that.
letting Terry go would be a dream.
But he mentioned um, he mentioned that as far as like letting him go and whatnot, and how the team played poorly and things. So I like a lot of what he said. I forget what you were saying initially. Why I
I
wanted to.
forgot to.
Yeah,
We can
yeah,
just move
but
on.
yeah, we'll just transition anyways because I wanted to see what you thought about what he said about Don. Oh no, yeah, yeah. So this was kind of wrapping up. So like, what are your thoughts on him saying that the day one he felt like from day one of training camp they didn't come in with enough energy?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, this was the part of the press conference that like pissed me off a little bit.
Yeah.
If you could tell, and we saw where the Sabres season was going in, even later, like in November, December. Why didn't you pull the trigger if you saw what was happening? You're there
Mm-hmm.
day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of on you. So that's his one fault for me, where it's like if you were recognizing this from day one,
Yeah.
why weren't you either A, putting your foot down and saying this is not how this is going to go? It's going to be, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and we're not going to get fall into these bad habits, or B, let the guy go.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, man. It was weird. Like if you're recognizing that early, you kind of think you want to do something about it.
Yeah, that's the one part where I felt like he missed a little bit because he seemed to be a little bit contradictory with him saying that he could notice that and that we needed to have more intensity and more focus and maybe we didn't start off right, but then also saying that if he felt like firing Don in the middle of the season was the right thing, then he would have done it. It's like you can't be seeing that and be seeing the inconsistencies and seeing the lack of accountability and just explaining it as, oh, I was just trying to be patient with Don. Well, it's like,
Yeah. What
well, you were
what did
being
he
patient
say?
with Don. We missed the playoffs for 13 years in a row again. When you could have made a chance before, or you could have made a break before and maybe had a chance. I mean, we're not the only ones who said that. There's multiple media outlets who said if you make the switch earlier, perhaps you make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
that's the one part I didn't like. He seemed a little contradictory. He didn't beat around the bush, but it just seemed like he didn't really have a good answer for it, and I didn't really like that segment. But
What did he say? I think he said that he was like he wanted to see if the players could play themselves out of it. Well, dude, they kind of did. Like I'm not gonna lie, like the Sabres were on like a 98 point pace after January, so they kind of did play themselves out of it, but they were just in too deep at the
yeah,
same time. It,
yeah,
it was almost like, yeah, we were excited on here and we were excited like in our private lives and stuff, like, oh my God, they could do it, they could do it. But Money Puck and all those outlets had the Sabres at like under 3% for a reason. Like it's impossible. You can't dig
yeah,
yourself such a hole.
yeah,
So yeah, I can see what you're saying. I'm disappointed as well. We're right on the money there.
yeah. Because he could have. I mean, he could have not said that the training camp piece, and it would have been fine. You know what I mean? Like I could have, but
Yeah.
the fact that you said that and the slow start is basically why we're not in the playoffs. Like those two things are they coexist. Like they're
Do
together.
you do you think he said that just so like they come in this year like we're not fucking around day one? Like
Yeah,
kind of didn't like really mean it for last year, but like wants to get ahead of it where like next like this fall we're coming in here and we're kicking the doors down.
potentially. Yeah, yeah. I think that's realistic and maybe it worked. Listening to the players. I mean, all the players said like I'm gonna bust my ass this year. This is for motivation. Again, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. So I guess we'll see. But I believe that. So yeah, it could have been something that maybe he didn't necessarily believe or just kind of said in the moment or whatnot. But again, it's frustrating to hear that. Edmonton's a good example. Like Edmonton, again, Stanley Cup versus just making the playoffs, but they weren't meeting expectations early on. They weren't afraid to pull the trigger, and look where they are now. Like
Yeah.
so that's what's frustrating as far as Adams goes. But um, a lot of good things, come out of it. We got into the coaching stuff that he mentioned. He did say something we didn't mention before, though. He did say that he expects a decision quick, and that's why I wanted to get this out, because we were even going to put this off to maybe tomorrow or Saturday, but we're like, we might have a head coach by then. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be that quick. But it sounds like he knows where he wants to go, and he's going to try and get it done as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Anything else as far as the pressure goes that you wanted to to talk
I
about?
did think I did think it was funny, where I don't know who asked the question because again, you can't really hear the questions, but I do know someone was like, do you think like this is a desirable job? And Adams replied like, I've got plenty of voicemails, and I'm like, that is a really funny response.
Yeah,
Like, I don't
yeah,
know, maybe we are desirable. I don't know. Like, you can see it on the outside where it's like laughing stock, but then like if you are within the league and you look at our pieces, it's got to be like one of the most. And think of how like think of how revered the coach is that puts us into the playoffs is going to be.
yeah.
Like, like man, build the first coach that puts us in the playoffs a statue. That's going to be a thing. So
His response there was awesome. I thought that was
yeah,
great. Like, that was it. It almost is like you can listen to it and think like, oh, like eye roll, or like think that's no big deal. But when I heard that, I was like, this was super smart. I was like, he's basically saying, even if it is undesirable, that's not what you put out there. You build
yeah,
it up as much as you can. So like, that was totally strategic from Adams. And when he said that, I kind of got a little pumped, because I was like, same thing. Like, I'm like, well, he's kind of got a point. Like, this is a hockey city. Like, you can be a big part of the reason why, when you revive it, you'll be revered, like you said. Like, the the roster is good. There's a lot of talent. Obviously, whoever they're going to get is going to be well paid. He made that very clear, that there's no lack of resources. So yeah, him saying that was pretty important, I think, and very
yeah.
smart, very smart. The
He's a
only
smart guy.
yeah. The last thing I want to mention here is just that the little bit about home ice. They were asked
Oh,
about that, and he said that he wants home ice to be more of an advantage for us next year.
well,
Stating
start winning
that,
games.
yeah, exactly. Like, if they're gonna make the playoffs, they got to play better at home. So I do have a couple things that I want to bring up from actually Kevin Adams 2022 that I'm curious to get your thoughts on, because like I said, I went back and listened to it, and totally different demeanor, like I
Yep.
was saying, and that's good. That shows that he's changing with the times. Last year I think it was easier to be a little bit more laid back and see some of the success, and they definitely exceeded some expectations last year despite not making the playoffs. But good to see him more bitter and more matter of fact this year. That's certainly what's needed. So I think, just as far as like comparing and contrasting, that was a big difference to me. And but I have a few quotes here that are kind
Okay.
of kind of
Give him to me.
interesting. Yep.
Give him to me.
Not many. I have like four things, but
This was last year, guy. This was last year.
this was 2022, Kevin. So
Okay.
yeah, so things he said going into, at the end of
This
last
year.
season, going into this year, but I think are somewhat relatable. So first one, this was right at the beginning, and he said, nothing external we will ever be more than what we internally expect of ourselves, and the challenges that we put on each other to raise our standards and be better. So what's frustrating hearing that from last year is the lack of accountability you saw this year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, that didn't translate, and that's
Yeah.
something that, if you believe last year, maybe you didn't have the right people in place, but it's got to be corrected this year. You can't have that be an issue again.
I
So that
agree.
so that was one thing. He says, I have no concern based on what I saw down the stretch that our guys won't be able to elevate and thrive in the big moments. We kind of talked about that. He still believes that. He just said we basically played poorly this year.
Hmm.
But again, just kind of a narrative that we hear a lot of, oh, they can't play under pressure. I still don't know how I feel about that. Part of me actually believes that, and part of me, is like, yeah, they just played bad. But like, again, what comes first there, chicken or the egg? I don't really know yet as far as that goes. On the home record, because again, they were terrible last year. Says I think as our guys mature, they will understand that you just go play at home. You don't have to put on a show. Maybe I pushed it too much about these guys having to earn everything. Almost tried too hard. Acknowledges that he had now acknowledged that the booze bothered them, and perhaps and that's perhaps why they suffered at home a little bit. So again, kind of another storyline we saw kind of bleed into this year. That's something they have to clean up. He addressed that again this year. That's an interesting thing. I don't know what to think about that. The home's just got to get cleaned up, and that's something that this next coach can hopefully help with a little bit more. Last thing on player development, my style is that we're all in this together. Okay, this is interesting. So he says my style is that we're all in this together. There is no walls or separation. There is no fear. They can walk into Don's office, walk into my office. I think that's the culture that we've built, and it allows our young players to accelerate their development. Hearing this, I think this for me was like this is last year. Like this is the year of development, and this is the culture that you needed to have. And now comes the change. Now comes not that you need fear, but you need to have there needs to be more pressure. There needs to be more accountability. Not that you need to be an idiot to the players, or that you're still not approachable and whatnot, but things have to be more business like in Buffalo. Like
Yeah.
it's not we're not that young team anymore. We've already laid out the expectations. Adam said playoffs is the expectation for this year. He was not willing to say that last year. He was not willing to put that out there definitively.
Yeah.
He did that this year. He said this is the standard, and we're raising that. So just some interesting things. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any
you
side notes on that.
going in reading back those, it sounded like that the organization had a little bit of hubris and kind of thought that like, oh, well, all these guys just had career years. They can only get better. Where like development isn't always linear, as we
Mm-hmm.
saw with like some players on our team. And that end comment that you just gave, I credit them for like building the relationships, and you got to have that, like you got to. But like you said, and I think like what Kevin said this year, that it's going to change. Like
Mm-hmm.
you, obviously, you're not like you said. You can't be a complete like you can be a prick, but you can't be like over the line. You can't be a Mike Babcock and be an asshole, like a complete asshole.
Yeah.
But I feel like going into this year, I'm kind of looking forward to guys pushing each other. Pushing them higher than they were, and even coaches just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna get on you. Like if you don't play the right way, we're gonna get on you this time, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not messing around. So
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, I mean,
I
go
I
back
like
to like the
I
fights in Bill's training camp, like, and people are
yeah
like that's no, like that's just intensity. That's just
yeah
the iron sharpens iron, analogy. Like that's
yeah
that's what they
that's
need. They
great.
just need more
Yeah.
fire and intensity. But listening back to it, I was, I finished it and I was like, I can kind of see why they were maybe a little complacent coming into this year, and just kind of felt like they didn't maybe there wasn't that drive to earn it, like it was coming to them anyways, like just go on the ice and play with your skill, and look what we did
Yeah.
last year, it's going to happen again this year. And it didn't, and they didn't know how to adjust, they didn't know how to
Well,
transcend that, and that's what we
even
saw.
like even like in game, I mean, I feel like this is another critique of Don, where it was like going into the full season, they thought it was going to come to them, and then they get punched in the mouth, and they had no answers.
Hmm.
Well, even in the games, from the games we didn't get scored on 4 times in the first like 10 minutes, we started out hot a lot, and then other teams like second period we didn't do shit,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
they kind of like took it to us, and that was just like an instance where like we would play well, and then another team would counter us, and we'd have no answer. So that kind of just was like a theme for the entire organization. It seems like.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think this is a good time to get into the players, because the players, because it relates back to Don a lot more, and
Oh, dude, I gotta say, I didn't think they were gonna cook this guy that much. Like I feel bad for Don. Like they were like with being as respectful as possible, and I'm sure they're gonna maintain a good relationship like after all this. But oh my god, man, they were fucking dogging him. Holy shit!
it was interesting to hear. and good to hear. I think again, it's there's going to be a lot of people who hear the interviews and aren't here for it, right? Want to kind of see it first, and I get that, but
Of
I
course,
think
absolutely.
I it and actions do speak louder than words, but the words count as well. And if you don't have the mindset, you're obviously not going to see any actions put into place. So at least they're saying the right things when they need to, and that makes me happy. But we'll start with Dahlin. Some things that he said players weren't good enough, didn't help Donnie at all, but admitted that the team needs to be pushed hard and they need a better focus in practice. And says practice is as important as the game. Any thoughts, real quick, just on kind of those first few things?
I mean, this was a theme. I think even today we didn't include it in the doc of like any of the conversations from today, but even Samuelson was like, maybe we need to practice harder. And I'm like, oh my God, man. Like, what were they doing in practice? Like, what were
Yeah.
they doing? Like, it really goes to show like what contributed to the slow starts that were just like for the entire season. Because man, I feel like they were just woefully unprepared like all the time, and it
Hmm.
goes back to practice.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of player to player accountability here. They talked about that, which is something that needs to be sharpened up next year. This is what makes me think of that Casey Middlestat quote, and 100% think he's just talking about not the elevation change, and 100% that our practices were
Dude,
just
that
lame.
this changed. These two last 2 days have changed my opinion on that. Like
Yeah.
I brushed that off, but oh my goodness. I also think like Bowen Byram is kind of contributing to this too, like coming into our organization
Oh,
from
I'm sure.
Colorado.
Yep.
He saw that and then he comes here and he's like, "What the fuck are we doing here?"
Hmm.
So go ahead.
Yeah, he kind of blasted the power play a little bit, saying that the power play was a big part of them not winning more games. Says they could potentially be in the playoffs or in a much better position if the power play was more effective. Another, I think, not direct shot at Don, or maybe not even when you're answering it, not thinking that it's a shot at the head coach, but when he says they didn't seem to have an answer for why the power play was ineffective is, I mean, that's like extremely a red flag to me. Like you need, and that's not as much as the players' job as the coaches, but the fact that the
Yeah.
players felt like they were searching for answers and didn't have them lets me know that the coaches didn't have them either. That's a major problem there. Got a couple more things, but any thoughts right there on power play at least?
Power play and penalty kill are probably the two. Like hockey's a very random game, obviously, and I feel
Yeah.
like at 5v5, like you kind of have your plan. But I feel like the power play is where like you see the good coaching. Like, yeah, talent on the power play of an extra man, that's great, but like if you're not teaching these guys, like telling them like the most dangerous positions to put the puck, it's just not going to work. And like our power play was horrible. And if the players are like, we can't figure this out, we need some help, and they clearly didn't get the help, you see where the problem is lying there. Because like I'm excited for them to be like coached differently there. Like I'm excited to see what kind of new setups they have, what players are out there, because I don't need to see Jordan Greenway on the power play ever again. No offense to Jordan Greenway, he's a good defensive player, but doesn't need to be on my power play. So I'm excited for um like tactically, and I'm excited for what they're gonna do like roster wise.
Yeah, tactically is the key word there. Like that's where it seemed like they didn't have answers for in game adjustments, and a lot of times it was just kind of like winging it and deviating from game plans, which is something that Tuch said as well, or Thompson said as well, and so yeah, in combination with these remarks from Dahlin about the power play, just kind of when you hear it, just kind of jarring at first, but and then as far as like next season goes, he says that team is still motivated, if not even more, to win next season. One big thing was it says the team wasn't prepared for expectations and pressure of the season. We've said that before, but doesn't that somewhat feel like an indictment on the veteran leadership in the team?
Oh yeah, like I really am disappointed in Kyle Poso and Eric Johnson and Zemgus Girgensons, because those are the three. Like, and honestly, you could put Skinner in this. He's an older player and
Yeah.
he's just not great this year. Like clearly, at least defensively, like and offensively towards the end there. But these guys, some of them are still young. Like I know Tage is 26, he's a little older, but most of these guys are like, under 24.
Yeah.
And to not have the guidance and the leadership and stuff from the older guys was just you could see why they felt a little lost.
Yeah, that's so frustrating to hear because at the end of the day, like the reason that veteran leadership is so important is because obviously a head coach has a lot to do with that, but you're gonna listen and just relate to your peers so much more, and they didn't have that. That's just extremely frustrating, and if guys as far as leaders go, checked out, sometime during the year, then that sucks. And I think that this quote, or at least what he said here, again, he wasn't calling guys out, but just in saying that, I think you can draw some inferences from there that maybe the guys who were supposed to be leaders in the locker room weren't doing as much as they needed to do. But we'll transition into Tage here, kind of go through some things here. He first off, because of the injury later in the year, he will not be competing in the Worlds due to a recent injury. He said he's going to be focusing and resting and getting better. But he again is another one who brings up the need for more accountability and consistently. He said they were playing too casual during the year, and the one thing that he said, as well as Tuch, was there needs to be more action and consequences, right, for players not playing well. And he said, bench me or put people in the press box. He said players felt too comfortable.
Yep. And a lot of his comments were basically just like you could pin it down to like we are adult hockey players, please stop treating us like we're children.
Yes, yes.
So he's like I can handle it. They pretty this was a theme throughout all of them, but especially Thompson. I was pretty impressed with his media availability because he's just like, hey, basically, if I'm playing like shit or one of my teammates are playing like shit, we all got to come together and we got to tell that player or show that player whether it's verbally or with consequences that if you're not playing the game the right way, then you're not going to play. Like
Hmm.
it's as simple as that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I told you I got a couple other things I want to say on Tage, but I was hard on Tage at the beginning of the year because I felt like early on he was not taking the lack of urgency and the bad results serious enough. And I get you don't want to hear some of the outside noise, but he seemed to kind of shrug some of that off early on in the season. And there was a lot of interviews where post game, he'd say like, "Oh, we got a lot of time left" and things. And like, yes, that is true. But reflecting on it now, you guys again played pretty good after January 1st. The slow start is why we're in this position again. So there needs to be that urgency from day one. But I will say this if you haven't watched it, you have to go watch it. This like he was on fire, man. I watched his and I watched this at like late at night. It was like 11, and after I was like so amped up. I was just like he said some seriously interesting things. I'm gonna just a few things here before we go on to Tuck. And talking about player accountability, he said player accountability needs to start with not being afraid to call guys out when things need to be addressed, understanding that that's coming from a place of love, and that's so important because I think that's what they probably didn't have a lot of this year. Knowing that, hey, if you're calling a guy out, I'm not calling you out to call you out. And if I am getting in your face or yelling at you like, hey, when we go in that locker room, we're still bros. Like I still got your back and I'm gonna have your back on the ice. We're just trying to elevate everyone's performance. And that's huge. So if that's something he's gonna be facilitating, I love that. This quote was probably my favorite one. Says that they need to be better at blocking out the outside noise and negativity, making sure that the only opinions that matter are the ones in the locker room. I just thought when he said that, I was like, dude, that is bang on. That is bang on. Even our show. I mean, if they listen to our show all year, they'd be like, fuck these guys. Like,
Exactly.
I
Like
don't want to, like, I get it. I totally get it. Like, you don't want to hear that outside noise, but you need to be better at blocking that out. And when he said that, that's what I felt like they struggled with at the beginning of the year. And he didn't want to hear that. And that shows me that there's a different mindset for him, and he's learned from that. So I like that. Says not reaching expectations of the season leaves the team hungry to not let it happen again. And then he hopes that the response to the coaching change is an increase in intensity and not feeling as comfortable. Any thoughts on there?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll come with the coach too, like instilling that mentality. Because like the players can say this now, and then they can come in September, and who knows what'll happen. But if they get a coach that'll come in here that'll put their foot down, and they're serious about wanting to maintain this level of intensity that they're going to talk about bringing in, well then let's go. Can we fast forward to September now? Because I'm pretty excited based off the things that Tage said.
For sure. And the reason so it's funny with Dahlin and Tage, I watched them first just because I think they're such influential pieces and they're obviously cornerstones of the franchise. When you think about leadership, Dahlin is going to be he's not that he's quiet, but there's a language barrier there. He does pretty good, but I think there's times, and even when you watch his press conferences, where he wants to explain something and you can tell he has trouble finding the words, so he kind of shifts and says something else and whatnot. And but to me, Dahlin is going to be, and he already is, he's that leader on the ice. He's going to get a big hit. He's going to bust his ass for 27 minutes a game, however much he's playing. Like, guys are going to look at him on the ice and be like, this is how I need to play all the time. Whereas I think Tage, he's very articulate. He's very thoughtful and insightful with his responses to the media, and he generally is well composed when he's talking to the media. So I think he's more of one of your key verbal leaders for the team in maybe facilitating conversations among the guys or having those conversations with guys. Though they're just differences in leadership styles, but I think big parts of the leadership team going forward for sure.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And then we got Tuch. We'll go through these quick, but Tuch basically said the team. So I feel like Tuch's session was a little bit more head coach driven.
Yep, yeah,
He's
because they asked him about Lindy and Gerard Gallant and
Oh, dude,
stuff.
it was so funny when he was like, "You got any other names? Like these were all great options." Which to me was like, okay, this guy's ready to get, like, he's joking about it, like, but he's ready to get a guy in here. Like he's done with the nonsense. Like he wants
Yeah,
a coach.
like
He's
that
excited.
sounded like an indictment of Don a little bit to be that excited for the new guy to come in, like a new
He
guy to come
was,
in. It's just
yeah.
like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he was literally excited about it, and for Don just being gone, like again, it just kind of shows you that they're ready for a change, certainly. But so Tuck was saying that they need the team needs and is ready for a coach that will hold them more accountable. Wants the next coach to be able to create energy in times where it's lacking. And help them reach their full potential. They did ask about Lindy, said that'd be pretty cool and a dream come true, but he also had high praise for his previous coach, Gerard Gallant. I thought this was a great quote. It says that he, quote, hates every team in the playoffs right now, is motivated to work hard to make sure the Sabres are there next year and not them. And then he says that he hopes guys realize they're a big part of why Don is no longer with the team, and they need to make sure that the next guy stays longer than him, and success on the ice will help that.
Yep,
Those were
that
kind
all
of
makes sense to me.
those were kind of the main highlights as
I
Tuck
like
goes. But
I like listening to Alex Tuck speak because you could tell like he grew up as a Sabres fan, so it is like it's sometimes you could tell in his speech that it's like so surreal that he's in this position like as a Buffalo Sabres player. So I like listening to him speak, but he's bang on there. I mean, he also pointed out that like he doesn't necessarily need to have a letter. I think he's going to have a letter on his chest, but
yeah,
this goes to the point where like we believe in the players in the room, and he said that there are a lot of leaders in this room. So I believe him. I believe him in that aspect. So
yeah,
yeah, his was like you said, his was more head coach oriented, and we touched on the head coach. But yeah, dude, it is so funny to me all these guys being like, oh yeah, we're ready to get pushed around basically.
it is. It is interesting. We obviously listen to these three, and we'll listen to more. But if you're listening to the show, and I would encourage listening to all of these. They all talked for on average probably about 16 minutes, and we gave you the highlights here. But it's there's a lot to glean from these three interviews, and this is your core, going forward. So it's they're good listens. And then speaking of Alex Tuck, I just want to. Real quick go on, and we'll put this in the show note, a link to his foundation page. But this was he was voted as the 2023-24 Rick Martin Memorial Award. So this is basically a fan vote. This is the second year in a row he's won it, voted on by fans who they believe best embodies what it means to be a Buffalo Sabre. So that's based on ice excellence, resiliency, and dedication to the community. So his 189 Foundation is a nonprofit organization that assists children facing challenges in areas of their lives with a special focus on supporting research to end children's cancer and helping those with special needs. And I was on the website and I checked it out. There's an Instagram page as well, and it's definitely a good cause. And if you're interested in donating or checking out, like I said, we'll link some of that information in the show notes. But I figured we'd touch on that now while we're on Alex Tuch. I mean, he's definitely super involved in the community as well.
Yeah, what a great guy. I'm glad that he is the one that won the Rick Martin Memorial Award, and because I think he's a fan favorite,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it's nice to have this guy as an ambassador to the team and one of our best players.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, from the goalie hugs to just like anytime there's like it seems like anytime there's like a thing at
The
KeyBank
woo,
Arena, like some
the
award, he's
woo,
always involved. The
can't forget
woo,
the
yeah,
woo.
the woo, yeah, exactly, yeah. All right, anything else here before we get into some of the bonus stuff real quick, and then maybe getting some Amerks?
You know what? I just realized that we're not going to be able to do because it's Thursday and playoff series start on Saturday, and we probably won't be able to record until like next Tuesday or Wednesday. We're not going to have our round one playoff picks until like next week. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're gonna have to like we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out. But that's just like something that popped in my head. Let's move on here. Oh, we get to talk about my favorite player,
Well, you know what?
dude.
Speaking of the playoffs, before we get into that,
Okay,
we will have a post, either well, probably over the weekend, either Friday afternoon or Saturday. With we're gonna do a for those interested, we're doing a bracket pool on NHL.com, and it's super easy to sign up. We'll have the information in the flyer. We'll post it on our Twitter. And if anybody wants to get in it and is listening to us doesn't have a Twitter, then you can always reach out to us on our email address as well, and we can give you the information for there. So it's on NHL.com, and then you have to create like a fan zone or a game zone account to get in there. It literally takes like 2 seconds. It's not bad at all. But we're gonna run that. We're just gonna do like a free thing this year, but that's something that we're just going to interact a little bit with our fans. We can update that weekly as we go, see how fans or listeners of the show are doing versus us. Just something fun that we're going to be doing. So we don't know how much pull there will be there, but if you're listening
yeah, it
and are
might just be us
interested,
two,
just
and if that's fine, that's fine.
but if you're listening, you're interested, yeah, go ahead, hop on in. We're gonna post on our Twitter, and we'll see. Have a bunch of fun doing that and watching some good playoff hockey. But you can go ahead and get into what you were going to talk about.
Got to shout out Zach Benson for you know scoring 10 goals and 30 points as an 18-year-old. Great. I love this kid. Whoever comes in to coach this kid is gonna love him. That's all I really wanted to say.
Yeah, and shout out to him for playing 71 games as an 18-year-old. I mean, that's just crazy to me. Like the season goes by so fast, but then at the end of the game, I looked it up. I'm like, man, this kid's 18, and he just played 71 games, and he didn't seem to break down to me. I mean, he just got stronger as the year went on.
Yeah, he did. He got a lot better, especially on the offensive side of the puck, like as the season went on. So man, he's gonna be a goddamn good player, and it's great.
Yeah, more
It's so
finishing at
what's
the end of the
funny?
year.
You know what's funny? So next year he's not AHL eligible still. It's either NHL or Western Hockey League for him.
Oh, really?
Obviously, obviously he's gonna be like on the Sabres, but it is
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so funny. Like if they did want to like not have him on the team, they'd have to send him back to junior. Oh
Oh
my
my god! Imagine he'd have like 200 points in the season.
god.
And then a quick shout out to Dahlin for scoring 20 goals on the season. First Sabres defenseman to reach that mark since Phil Housley last did it in 1989 and 1990. And I think Housley did it like 5 times. Like, it's
Well,
just
there was one
nuts.
season where Phil Housley literally played center, so
All right, so he had a cheat code, that season. But and
no,
then
he was an amazing player, but
and
still.
then just a quick little shout out to Eric Comrie. Had a great last game for the Sabres and stopped 31 of 33 shots. And I like to shout out Comrie because it didn't work out here, but that dude, like, he just
He's
seems
just the
so
coolest guy.
cool.
I
Yeah,
want to if I ever got to meet like a random ass dude at a bar and he sat next to me and it was Eric Comrie, we'd get along just fine. He just seems like an amazing guy.
he's just the most wholesome dude. It looked like watching his. It was just a few minutes, but watching him talk after that game, it almost looked like he was gonna cry. You know, like
Yeah.
he was just so. I think he wants to be here. I think he really likes this organization and the team. And again, it didn't work out just with UPL stepping up and him battling some injuries last year, and then not getting much time this year and not playing good when he had the time. It just it didn't work out. But um, I I just love the guy, man. I wish him nothing but the best, and we'll see what happens with him next year. But a quick shout out to him for playing that last game and playing really well. So,
Yep. I agree. Good for him. Good guy.
all right, well, that wraps up the Sabres talk, but we got to take some time here and get into the Amerks because we will have playoff hockey 60 60 70 miles down the road in Rochester. They're continuing their hot play, and they just on Saturday whooped on the Belleville Senators 8-2. They just had a huge win yesterday against the Toronto Marlies, a 3-1 win. They have two more games left on the season, and they're currently tied for first in the North Division with the Syracuse Crunch with two games left to play. They're 3 points ahead of Cleveland, who's in third right now. So it's pretty much Syracuse and Rochester battling for first place in the North Division. They're on a heck of a run here lately. They've only lost one game in like their last 10. What do you think about the Amerks here, Ryan?
Dude, they're on fire.
Yeah,
And they're fun to watch
they're
too. They're
really
really
fun to
fun to
watch.
watch.
Yeah.
They have great offensive players. They have fourth liners that bang it around. They have, good defensemen, and even when they're not playing great, Devin Levi is unbelievable. Like there
hmm
was a couple games like a game last week where he let in some stinkers and they lost.
That was
But
also against Belleville, the home and home, because they
yeah,
lost to Belleville. Like that game was like 6-2 or something.
yeah, he wasn't great in that game, but for the most part, he's been unreal. I think he's second in the AHL in save percentage with a 927, and man, he is going to be a great pro in my opinion. He's been great, and it's exactly what we wanted to see from Devin Levi. Go down there, be the man, dominate, and we'll see whether he's in the NHL next year. But this team is worth the price of admission. I can't wait for playoffs. I'm gonna go to a game. I might go to multiple games. We'll see. It's gonna be fun, man. I'm excited with the way they play, and they have a chance. If my computer loads, it's not loading. I'm trying to look at the schedule because I'm pretty sure that Syracuse plays Utica twice to end the season, and we also play Utica one time to end the
Yeah,
season, which is
our
crazy to me.
last game is against Utica,
Okay, who's the one before that?
Cleveland. They
Okay, so
play
we play
Cleveland
Cleve.
tomorrow, which will, or when you ever listen to this, they'll play Cleveland on Friday the 19th, and then the last game is against Utica on Sunday.
Okay, so Syracuse plays Utica twice. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Utica is like basically going to see who places in first or second or third in the division, and I'm happy with the Amerks because they're going to avoid that number 4 seed and number 5 seed little play-in round that they were in last year.
hmm
So, man, if they finish in second, they're likely playing against Cleveland, and if they finish in first, then they're going to play against the winner of Belleville and Utica, I believe.
Yeah, and I think getting first, not that they can't beat Cleveland, but Cleveland just got a ton of reinforcements
They
from
did.
the major leagues. So like from the major leagues,
Oh my
from
God, what are we talking baseball? God damn. Yeah, they got back David Jiricek, Luca Del Bel Belluz. They got a ton of guys back
yeah.
that are really good age, like gonna be great pro, like NHLers in the AHL.
Yeah, so Cleveland is somewhat reinforced, so I would prefer them to get that number one seed, of course, and then you have home ice advantage as well. But yeah, it's exciting times. Dude, the best thing about the Amerks is just how fun they are to watch. Like if you're listening to this and if you don't mind spending, I think the playoff package for the AHL, if you do just like a single team, I think it's like $20 or $30. Like I'm telling you, if you have time to sit down and watch these games, this is a fun team to watch. Like they are fun, and so I encourage everyone to do that. We'll be watching and we'll be updating everyone, of course, on the show here as we go. It's going to be a ton of fun. Hopefully, we can get, like you said, to a couple live games. That would be cool. Share some picks on the Twitter and whatnot to share with people who listen to the show. But yeah, I'm excited for this playoff ride, and they can do it, man. I mean, they have a good enough team to win it all. They were right there last year. Unfortunately, the chocolate and white got the better of them in Chocolate Town. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this year because Kulik is a ton of fun to watch. Rosine is a ton of fun to watch. Noichev is fun. I mean, Kizikov is just this big dude that's like just fast too. Wahlberg is there
Wahlberg,
now.
man.
They just
Wahlberg's a
got
giant.
they just got Osland as well.
Yep. And he's
Reassigned
gonna play
to,
this weekend.
and he's gonna play. Like they're just like, listen, all the kids are there. So if you want to see some good young hockey and some exciting hockey, that's the place to be. And hopefully we're talking on the show next week about them finishing first. But that's it for Amerks, I think, right?
Yeah, that's it.
All right,
Dude,
everybody.
before we leave, I need to laugh at the Detroit Red Wings. Because I have been preying on their downfall all season. I hate them with every ounce of passion in my body. And it's insane because growing up, I was like the biggest Red Wings fan. I loved, like, Pavel Datsyuk is my favorite player of all time. Like, oh my God, unbelievable talent. Ugh, but this version of the Red Wings, fuck them. Patrick Kane picked them. I
You
hate
always get one solid fuck the Red Wings in every
I
episode.
have to. But dude, this week was insane. So somehow the Washington Capitals snuck in the playoffs minus 37 goal differential over the Red Wings and the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Flyers. But that final day was so crazy, dude. I will break it down. The Flyers and the Capitals were playing at the same exact time that Detroit was playing Montreal. Washington gets in with a win any way possible. The Flyers need a win in regulation specifically to have a chance. And Detroit gets in with a Washington loss. Montreal is beating Detroit with 7 seconds left. David Savard ices the puck like a fucking idiot. Oh my god, it was like a brain dead play, and I'm like, they're gonna fucking score off this faceoff. I know it. And what do you know? David Perron with a rocket into the back of the net from the point, and Detroit again for the second day in a row ties the game. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you serious?
I can't
But
believe they scored with 3 seconds
but
left.
wait, the other game. I flip back over to the other game. Washington and Philly are tied 1-1 with 5 minutes left. John Tortorella thinks, holy shit, Montreal is beating Detroit. We have a chance here. We need a win in regulation. Pulls the goalie. Washington, a minute later, gets the puck and scores what would be the game winner. Washington wins 2-1. Little did he know that Detroit already tied the game. So they were out as it was, because if Detroit goes on to win in overtime or the shootout, which they did, they're out.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
oh, like,
Yeah,
do you
Kane scored the shutout the shootout winning goal, and they didn't even celebrate
they
because
didn't even celebrate like
they
they
knew they
knew.
were out. Yeah.
But could you imagine, like, if so they pull the goal and let's say they had a whistle, like, could you imagine the panic running through the Capitals if, like, they put the goalie, like, what, Philly knew that they were out anyway, and like, well, we're not going to pull the goalie now, so they put him back in.
Yep.
Oh my God, they would have been panicking.
It was
But
such an
holy
interesting
shit,
scenario, but it is funny. It is
it
funny.
was incredible. But it is hilarious that the Capitals got in. The Capitals are terrible. They're getting swept. They're getting swept by the Rangers. It's nice to see Detroit out of the playoffs. Oh my God, I could not. They're so much better than us, and they're going to golf at the same time. So it makes me very happy.
You know what's so funny? You say that. So I don't know if you saw this tweet. Sabermetrics yesterday tweeted a picture of this is so great. He tweeted a picture of just the standings zoomed in on 5, 6, and 7, which is Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa, and it just said the
Yeah.
Three Amigos. and then and then underneath it, he commented and goes, "These guys would run a killer golf league every April and May."
That's really good. That's really funny.
But when I saw
Dude,
that and it said the Three Amigos, I just started laughing because that's.
I feel like,
I mean,
dude, the
coming into the
best.
year, everybody was
Even the year
saying
before. Even the year before.
one, if not two of these teams is going to take that jump this year, and here we all are again.
Dude, we're never being the allegations as playoff, we just can't make the playoffs. It's insane. It's
Just
so
so,
funny.
just so funny, dude. Also, like speaking of funny, last thing here, I thought for sure Dave Portnoy was going to like repost this comment or this because he tweeted 8 hours ago what NFL or what oh my god, I'm switching all sports tonight. What NHL playoff teams are gritty? Question
Yeah.
mark. So I quote tweeted it and I said not the Flyers. Dot dot dot. Put up this. Right? Like that's a funny tweet. I'm like, this is good. I'm like, and nothing, just
No
silence.
traction. No traction. It does suck when you think you put out a banger tweet, 'cause it happens to me a lot, and then you get no play on it, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I thought I was funny.
I know what the heck. I thought that was so good. I'm like, dude, Portnoy's gonna love this, but whatever. Who
No,
cares?
he's too busy petting Miss Peaches, who's like the most adorable dog of all time.
All right, folks. Well,
Uh,
that's gonna do it
this was
for
a good
today.
one.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, lots of fun, and we'll obviously, be back next week with those NHL picks, and we'll have that, like I said, the info sheet put up on the social there soon for everybody who wants to get in. But other than that, we will see everybody in the next episode. And if you don't already follow the podcast, make sure you do so. Rate and review and subscribe, and also check us out on YouTube.
Best time of the year, baby. Playoffs. Let's go.
Yes. All right. See you guys.
Bye.